Hey guys, welcome to Create Art with Jazz. Today we'll be doing a cartoon of Kylie Jenner. So let's get right to it. Before you start your cartoon, you want to find a picture that is very clear and a picture that you can see all the details very well on. So I just found two pictures. I'm doing this in Adobe Illustrator Draw, and I'm using two separate layers. So one layer is so that I can look at the picture while I'm drawing without having to use a separate screen, and the other picture I'm using as a guide to draw on top of. I'm starting with the outline. I'm just using a small brush. Now, the pencil that I'm using is the Apple pencil, and it's very pressure sensitive. This is great for me because I have carpal tunnel, and this helps me not to overuse my hands. I don't have to press very hard for the lines to show up. So I'm just going around and I'm adding in her baby hair. Just take your time and make sure you get all of the details in there, and make sure you get all the details in the right place. Don't rush it. With the Apple pen, I noticed that it's very kind of like slippery, so when I draw with it, if you press too hard or go too fast, sometimes you can create lines that you don't want. If that happens, you can always go back and erase those lines, or you can press the undo button. So anyway, I'm just going in and drawing in all the fine details in the hair, just making the swoops. You want to make sure that you get the directions right with your lines. So make sure you're following the direction of the hair pattern. Try not to go against that. This will create a more natural looking portrait cartoon. And just continue to go all around her hair and follow those directions and lines. Don't rush this process. It can be a little tedious, but the end results will pay off. You have a great looking picture at the end. I'm using the iPad Generation 6 for this tutorial. The Apple Pencil only works with certain iPads, so you have to be careful if you invest in the Apple Pencil. Make sure that your iPad will work with it, because when I first bought the Apple Pencil, I had the iPad that came out in 2017, and it did not work with it, so I had to upgrade to the iPad Generation 6. And don't be afraid to zoom in and out to make sure that you can see everything. If you're working on a smaller screen like I am, you want to zoom in really closely so that you make sure you get all the details in. And if you're working on a bigger screen, you can afford to zoom back a little bit. You'll see me zooming in and out just to check the picture itself, and also to make sure that I'm getting all the lines in there. Some things are hard to see on the small tablet screen. So I'm just going to continue around. When you get to the bun, the direction of the hair changes. So make sure you're following those curves, and make sure you're just taking your time and putting all of the details in there. And again, it's up to you. For this particular picture, I want it to be a little more detailed than the average cartoon. So I'm taking my time and putting all the small details in there. You really don't have to do that. If you want to, you can just shade the whole thing in black and add some small details around the hairline, and that still looks good. You may also want to lower the opacity on the picture that you're drawing on top of so that you can see everything very clearly. I've been doing this for a little while, so I'm just going to keep it like it is for right now. One thing I noticed about Kylie Jenner's eyebrows is that they are pretty much perfect, meaning that there are no hairs outside of the line of the brow. So make sure that you take your time. If you're drawing a picture like this or the same picture, make sure that you're taking your time and getting those eyebrow hairs perfectly in the right direction, and making sure that they are not going outside of the line. Again, this takes a little bit of practice, and it also takes a little bit of discipline not to rush it and not to go outside of those lines. If you're using the Apple Pencil, again, it's very sensitive, and you want to just hold it steady and get those lines nice and precise. If you mess up, it's okay. Press that undo button or erase and just start over. Or you may want to just start over with a whole new layer. So now I'm going to adjust the opacity and lower it so that I can see a little better. I'm going around the eyes now, and I'm going to create the eyelashes. Since this is a cartoon, you can make them a little more dramatic if you want to. I decided to pretty much follow the shape of her eyelashes and just continue with what she already has. But you can exaggerate this part if you want to. It's a cartoon, so make sure you're having fun with it. So I'm just putting the eyelashes in strand by strand. And I'm also zooming in so I can see better. And just continue to fill those eyelashes in strand by strand. You can go back in a little bit later and come in with some bigger strands. But I want to make sure that I have all the little details in there. And that's what's going to make this portrait pop at the end. This is one of the most fun parts of the portrait, but it's also one of the most tedious parts. So again, take your time, relax. Don't let that pen slide around, or if you're using a regular iPad, you can also use a different type of stylus, and just be careful and take your time and get all those details in there. Okay, so now we're going to the eye, and I'm just creating a freehand circle for that center part, and I'm outlining the eye with black. I'm also using a very small pen size so that the outline is not too thick, but it's a cartoon, so you can't play around with that. Just experiment. See if you would rather have a thick line or a small line. Just see whatever looks best. I really like her eye color, so I want to make sure that a lot of that hazel brown is showing through. So I'm going to keep my line thin. Now, sometimes I do make it thick. It just depends on what color the person's eyes are and what I feel looks best on them. I'm adding more detail to the eye now and also drawing in the lower lashes. Now, if this were a realistic portrait, I definitely would not have black lines around the eye, and I definitely would not have black lines on the actual eye. And really, I wouldn't have black eyelashes. I would use a more natural shade of brown and build up to that. So keep that in mind. If you want a realistic portrait, this is not the technique, but if you're looking for a nice, fun cartoon, this is a great technique. The outline really brings it in and captures the person's features, and that's what makes it fun. So I'm going to continue to the other eye, just adding in all the little details and setting up the picture so that when we're done, we can go in with the colors, and we'll do those colors on a separate layer. So it's up to you if you're a beginner artist or just to make things easier on yourself in general. I like to use separate layers to a certain extent, especially with the cartooning. It's nice to keep a few separate layers. As you go along and you feel comfortable and you feel confident with what you have, you can start to merge down later on in the process. But in the beginning, it's great to start out with a few different layers. That way, if you make a mistake, you can erase them. You can also go back and adjust the opacity. You can lower the opacity if you put the colors on too heavy, or you can even duplicate your layers to make the colors stand out more. So layers are fun. Now, I put that line there by mistake and I didn't notice it until later, so that line's going to be there for a minute. But again, you can always press the undo if you catch it right away. I was so focused into what I was doing, I did not see that black line on the eye. So just ignore that, and I'm just going to keep going and adding in the eyelashes on the bottom. And I'm pretty much doing them one by one. Now, as I go further, I will go in with a bigger, darker brush to just kind of define those major parts. And if you haven't done so already, hit that subscribe button so you can see more videos like this. I try to upload once a day with drawing videos and art tutorials. I'll also have some videos where I just share my knowledge and advice about art. I've pretty much been doing art all of my life, and it's a passion of mine. It's something that I love to do. I also do commission paintings, and I do paintings just for fun. So we're going to go in back into those eyebrows and add more detail. So I'm zooming out so I can kind of get a feel for where I'm at and make sure that everything is pretty much looking good as a whole. Sometimes when you zoom in so much, you kind of miss the big picture, and maybe you concentrated too much on one area and not enough on another area. So every now and then you want to zoom out to make sure that your picture is looking good as a whole overall. So yeah, it looks pretty good. You can see the picture on the left. I like to leave that there so I'm not using like a phone or another computer screen just to see the picture. So I'm going to up my brush size just a little bit, and I'm going to go around the side of her face. If you don't get it right on the first time, you can redo it. I was moving a little too fast there, so I had to slow down and go back in. I noticed with the Apple pen that I'm more successful with the smaller lines if I do those fast, but when I'm doing the bigger lines, the longer lines, especially the outlines around the face, I have to take my time and do those very slowly. So I'm liking the way this line is coming out, and I'm just going to continue around the face. Make sure that you take your time and get these really right, and it doesn't have to be perfect, but make sure you're following the structure of the person. If you're using a picture, if you're doing it freehand, you have a little more leeway. And I'm just going to draw in the neck here and continue back up to the hair. When you're doing a picture, usually of girls or women, the hair takes the longest part, in my opinion. So I'm just going to zoom in to the eyes and get rid of that line that I did not mean to put there. And I'm just going in with a very small eraser to do that. And now I'm making it a little bigger so I can sweep up all those little specks that were left over. I'm zooming in now so that I can see the eye very well. And I'm drawing in little lines here. And those little lines are just adding the detail to the eye. She has about 3 to 4 main colors in her eye, and also with the cartoon black, you want to add those in for the darkest parts. So now I'm just doing the outline of the nose, and I'm doing that pretty fast because I don't want to get any breaks in my line. Sometimes when I do the smaller lines too slowly, they come out a little crooked or a little, they have like these little bends in them. So I'm going around the lips and doing the same thing, just carefully following the shape of her lips. And I'm going to do the bottom lip. And to make things easier on yourself, make sure that those lines are closed. So make sure from beginning to end that the line connects to another line so that you can go in and just fill in the lip color. And I'm just going to close that line off right there. And I'm checking right now. That line is a little open, so I'm going to go back in and continue that line until it runs into the next line. With the Apple Pencil or with your stylus, you can press and hold. And when you do that, that center of the line will fill in with whatever color that you choose. So that just makes the coloring a little bit faster and a little bit easier. Now I'm just going back in and around the ear and making sure that those lines are nice. And I'm paying close attention to my line weight. You want to make sure that you don't put too much pressure or those lines will come out really thick. I'm also checking to see if I missed anything. If I did, I'm going to go back in now and put in those small details. I'm noticing that the nose on the left side is a little off. It's a little too far away from the middle of her nose. So I'm going to go back in there, erase that out, and redraw that line in. So sometimes little details count. This is a more realistic portrait. It's not super cartoony. So I do want to make sure that I keep the features close to the picture. If you want to, you have a little leeway with cartoons. If you want to add a certain feature and make it bigger, or if you want to enhance a feature and make it stand out for some reason, make sure there's a reason behind it. If you want the eyes bigger because her eyes really stand out, that's really cool. But for this tutorial, I'm following her actual shape. And I just added some really small details in there just to give her face a little bit of character. I was thinking about putting one on her jawline, then I decided, nah, it didn't really look flattering and it was not necessary. So I took that out. Now I'm doing the outline around her dress or shirt, whatever it is. And in this picture is cut off. I didn't do the research to see what the dress really looked like, so I'm just going to make up my own design and just use your imagination. It's obviously symmetrical, so I'm making the right side complement the left side. So I just took away the picture just to see where I'm at, and I'm happy with my outline. The lines are coming out very nicely, and to make it easier on yourself, you want to close out those gaps in the lines so that you can go in and fill in the color with whatever color that you want. Now I'm zooming in extremely closely and I'm making sure that there are no breaks in the lines. And so far I'm seeing a couple, so I'm just going to go back in and connect those together. Now I'm noticing that my drawing went outside of the page, so I'm going to use the transformation tool and shrink that picture down. Now the next steps will be going into the color, so it's nice to start off with a background color. That just gives you like a ground to start with. It's not so plain and dry as just starting with the plain color white. So I chose this color. It's closest to the darkest color in her skin color, and then I'm just going to build up from there. So we can start with the dark and build up with the lights. And this is a good size for what my final picture will be, so I'm going to stick with. I'm filling in the eyes with white, and it's not a full 100% white. I did lower the opacity a little bit, and I'm just going to continue around the outside of the eye with the white color. Now, one thing that's different about the Apple Pencil when you're doing your outlining, if you're pressing hard and in a continuous movement, the line will spill outside of where you want it to be. So just be careful when you're pressing down to remember to lighten up. If those strokes are going to be a little bit longer, just lighten up on your pressure and literally lighten up with your hand movement, and that will keep some of that down. If it still goes outside, as long as you're on a different layer, it's okay. You can go back with an eraser and just erase those little imperfections away. For this part of the tutorial, I'm doing this in real time, so you get to see the actual process and how long it really takes. The picture in total took around, I want to say about 5 hours for me to complete. So towards the end of the video, I will be speeding it up just so that you won't have to watch a 5-hour long video. If you have any questions, leave your comments below. I will answer all comments and questions. And if you have anything that you didn't understand, or if it went too fast for you, just feel free to just tell me what exactly that was, and I may make another video to address that. Now I'm using a very light pink to go around her eyes. I'm not using color dropping because I like to get the practice of training my eye to see the colors that are actually there. If you want to make it easier on yourself, you can color pick the colors right from her face, and that'll give you an accurate color. I believe that also helps you in the beginning if you're just learning. That helps you to train your eye to see colors better. Again, I like to just make up my own colors, and I feel that that helps me in the long run. So I'm going to go in and just pick some different colors. Also, keep in mind, you can lower the opacity. Don't use 100% on everything. If you're using 100%, it will come out very cartoony, and you may also get some results that you wouldn't want. So just keep in mind, if you were doing this traditionally, you would probably water down your paint or mix your colors. So with the opacity feature, you can lower and raise the opacity to adjust how much paint you want to let out. So now I'm filling in the eyes with different shades of brown. I feel that her eyes are just absolutely gorgeous in this picture, and I really want to bring them out, so I'm taking my time and putting in a lot of detail into the eyes and just using lots of different shades of browns. So do not rush this part if this is important to you. If you want to keep the cartoon more simple, you can just fill it in with like a neutral shade of brown, just whatever her main color is. You can use that. But I'm going to go in and just layer up the colors, and I'm adding in lots of different colors of browns, and I'm going to also add in a few different shades of more yellowish browns, oranges, just to bring it out. If you want to really experiment, you can go in and add some different layers and play around with some different color combinations. And if you want to get an accurate, super accurate color of her eyes, you can also go back and pick back and forth, pick the colors. So the way you do that, you just click on your color tool, you place it over the part of the eye that you want, and you can pick that color. I like to just come up with my own colors and learn through trial and error. I just feel that it makes you a better artist in the long run. But either way, it's a learning experience. So do it whatever way you feel comfortable with. So I'm just playing around again with some different colors, and I'm using her mid color, like the main brown color in her eye, and I'm going over the whole eye with that color. And I'm going to mess around with the different opacity and just see whatever looks the best. When you're doing this and you decide to change it up, it's okay. It's all part of the learning experience. The more trial and error you do, the more you'll teach yourself different tricks, and you'll find out what works and what doesn't work. If you're using traditional paints, you can mix your colors, you can water them down a little bit, and just have fun experimenting. If it doesn't come out right, just wet your paint again and go back in and try it all over again. So I really have fun with the eyes. I feel that the eyes really bring out a portrait. The eyes, the eyebrows, the eyelashes, especially on a woman's portrait, it really makes the portrait more beautiful and makes it stand out. Again, this is a cartoon portrait, so if you want a totally realistic portrait, never go in with outlines, never start with black, and never just do what I'm doing for this. This is strictly for cartooning or for a portrait that's not realistic. So I'm going to go in with some yellows and just see if I'm liking it or not. And I never really noticed how unique her eye color is. There are lots of different colors in here. I feel like this is a good opportunity to make a really beautiful portrait. I'm using the color picker to choose my own colors and just see what works best. And the more you do this, the more accurate you'll be. Because when I first started, I would really be surprised at how off I was on my colors. I was really surprised to see that there were so many colors in the portrait. Colors that you don't think will be in there are there. Now I'm going to go in and add some highlights to the eyes, and I'm just using white at a lowered opacity. I feel confident with that, so I'm going to raise the opacity to 100% and go ahead and fill in those little details. I'm looking at the picture to see where the highlights are in her actual picture, and I'm going to try to pretty much duplicate that and put the highlights in just about the same place. It doesn't have to be exact. When you get to this next part, start paying close attention to the shadows and where they fall. Make sure that the picture that you choose has some good shadows. They don't have to be big, but they do need to be defined. So that really helps for the features to stand out and for the person to be recognizable. I'm going in with a medium color brown for the shadows in her face. This is optional. Remember, it's art. You can make the shadows purple if you want. You can make the shadows any color that you want. But I'm choosing brown. It's pretty much the darkest color in her portrait. So I'm going to go in and just outline around her forehead, nose, and different areas of her face that have dark shadows with a brown color. And I'm adding the detailed shadows, and just make sure you take your time, get those lines and angles right. Do not rush the process. You will be happy in the end when your picture turns out really great. During this part, you want to make sure you check back with the reference and just make sure that you put those shadows in correctly. You can change it up. It's artistic freedom. So if you want to make this cartoon a little different, you can make the shadows bigger or darker or choose a different color than what you see. For this one, I'm going to keep it pretty much close to the picture. I'm trying not to make it look too realistic though, because I don't want it to go too far and then also get into a very long painting. Sometimes these paintings can take 20 to 30 hours if you make them super, super detailed. So I'm just looking around, and so far I'm liking everything. I'm putting the shadows in the eyelids, and I'm checking back and forth, zooming out, because now I want to pay a little more close attention to the actual reference picture. And I'm seeing what you're seeing. Sometimes I use a separate screen, but for this tutorial, I'm just using what's in front of me. So I'm going around the eyebrows too, and you want to make sure that you stay within the lines. I didn't want her eyebrows to be flat black because I feel that just really flattens the picture, and it's okay for cartoons, so if you want that look, that's fine. But for this one, I want to have a little more dimension to it. So sometimes you can add browns or even darker shades of violet into those dark areas instead of using a flat black. So I'm using brown. So let me know where you're at with your art. Are you a beginning artist, intermediate, advanced? And if you're new to digital painting. And also, if you have any questions at all, put them in the comments below, and I will answer all comments and questions. Okay, so we're going to speed it up a little bit because now we're going to get into all the coloring of the face. And again, for this process, we're going to go from dark to light. Normally when I paint traditionally, I go from light to dark, or I either start medium and work in the darks and lights. So we're going to just fill in some of these colors and add some shading. I'm going in with some fine detailed shading around the top of the forehead and also shading around the cheeks. Now, there's a million ways to do this. I'm choosing to do this with small lines, and I'm just adding in all these little details into her face. And I lowered the opacity so that it's not overpowering. I don't want to create really, really dark lines, especially her face looks really soft on this picture. Her makeup is pretty much flawless, so I don't want to come in with some hard lines. For this part of the portrait, it's also important to really have that reference handy so you can see it. So if this is not efficient for you, you can also print out the picture or show it on a bigger screen or your cell phone screen because you can put it up to your face. Okay, so I'm really paying close attention to my reference and I'm adding in some of the pinks in her cheeks. Now be careful with this. You don't want it to be too rosy for this picture. It's semi-realistic, even though it's a cartoon, but I don't want it to get too red or rosy. So I'm going in with that. Now I'm adding in a lighter color for her light tones in her face. And again, if you want to, you can pick directly from her face and get the exact colors. But I'm just eyeballing it just to kind of sharpen my own skills and play around with those colors and really develop my eye even further. So I'm going in with the light colors and I'm going back over them just to tone them down a bit. I don't want her face super washed out, and it can be a little bit darker or lighter than the actual picture. Again, it's a cartoon and it's art, so make it what you want it to be. Have fun with it. So I'm going to go all around the face and just really start to form these shapes with shading and really pay attention to the shapes inside of the face. And I believe that's how you really get the details. So the shapes in her cheeks, the shapes around her eyebrows. And to make those eyebrows pop a little more, I added a few more highlights to the tops and bottoms of them. Now I'm going in on a separate layer for the hair. I'm putting the hair on really thick, so I want to go back and thin that hair out. I'm using an eraser, and I'm just using a very thin eraser and going around and showing some of that scalp. It's still a little too heavy for me, so I'm going to go back and just lower the opacity and just bring it down. She does have very, very dark hair, but I don't like when my picture gets flattened out. And I don't want it to seem like the hair is just sitting on top of her head. I want it to look like it's growing out of her scalp, which it is in the real picture. So I'm going to tone down that hair a bit and actually lighten the color just a little bit and pull out some of those highlights. So just take your time on this part. Remember, this part of the video is super sped up. The actual time it took me to do this hair, it could have been like at least an hour just on the hair. So just take your time and stay with the direction. So I'm adding in highlights and I'm also taking out here. Whatever brush I use, whatever color I use, I'm making sure I keep the lines in a directional angle. So if her hair is curved, I'm making sure all the lines are curved. You want to really do that so that your lines aren't hedge crossing over each other, unless that's the style you're going for. So I'm going to go through and just pull out some more of that hair so that you can see her scalp a bit. And I'm going to tone that down. Now I'm adding in some shadows around her face. And just to give her a more three-dimensional look, I could have left those shadows a little dark, but I decided to lower the opacity and just lighten them up a little bit so they won't be overpowering. I do want this cartoon to have a light, airy feel. I don't want it to be like super heavy and dramatic. Now I'm going in into the top of her garment and I'm just adding in little details and highlights. I'm actually kind of like giving myself a break at this point and I'm just having fun with it. I'm not going detail for detail with the garment. It looks like some little chains or something, but I'm just going in and putting in these nice little circles and I'm going to play around with the texture on her garment. It doesn't have to be exactly like the picture. So I'm adding in all the details. Again, this part of the picture probably took at least another half hour to 40 minutes. So take your time, relax, just enjoy yourself. You can also change the color up or the texture or just give like a feel for the texture. You don't have to make it exactly like your picture. I'm really liking the way this is coming out. And I'm adding a little bit of see-through so that you can see her skin through it, like in the picture. And then I just top it off with my design around her. I'm having so much fun doing this. I love creating portraits and I love creating cartoons. So if I can combine the two, that's just great. Feel free to add whatever little details you want to make the picture pop. And you can take these pictures and put them on anything you want. That's what I love about vector art. If you liked this video and you found it helpful, please give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe to my channel to see more drawing how-to videos. Thanks for watching.